One-year-old tight end George Kittle to a 4-year, $76 million contract extension. Six-time Pro Bowler will get $40 million in guaranteed money. Still no word on if or when they will get a new deal done with their quarterback, Brock Purdy. Next up, let's play a game of more or less. Updated win totals after the draft from ESPN Bet. Hey, Peter Schrager, the number on Cowboys, 7.5 wins for Dallas. You going over or under?
Greeny, I'm going over. Like this guy right here? This is Tyler Booker. This guy is a grown man and a leader. And why do they draft him? Because they lost Zach Martin and Tyron Smith the last 2 years, and their offensive line has taken a hit. They now have one of the youngest offensive lines. This guy is going to be the leader in the locker room. They also added Miles Sanders. They also
total is 5.5 wins for the Giants. You going more or less?
I'm going to go more. I think that possibly with a full year of health from Neighbors and Thomas, the offense gets better. And adding Abdul Carter to that defensive line, I think, gives them a real building block to have a really talented and much improved defense. 5's not a lot of wins. They do have a tough schedule, though. But right now, it's still offseason. We can be optimistic. I'm going over.
They could have an unbelievable pass rush, right? Like back in the days when they were NASCAR package, all that stuff. All right, Tim Hasselbeck. The total is just 4.5 wins for the Cleveland Browns. Are you going more or less?
Well, more. And Greeny, I think you kind of alluded to it there. Like, it's just so low. You know, the fact that you look at the Browns a year ago, 4 of their losses were one-score games. So I'm not saying it's going to be more than 5, but I think the total being so low, I do think, you know, they'll have stable quarterback play, you know, for much of the season. I think part of that's how they coach offense. And I think it'll be a good defense, still led by Jim Schwartz.
Okay, so Tim, let me start with you here, because obviously the story of the draft was the slide of Shedeur Sanders all the way into the 5th round. And I have not gotten your perspective on it through a quarterback's eyes. I have my own theory on how it turned out for him. But I just want to confirm, there were some people who were not that high on him going into this process. Well, obviously, many people, as it turned out. But is he a 5th-round player to you? I mean, if you were evaluating him and putting a round, a grade on him and say his play deserves to be an X round, what round would you have had it in as an evaluator?
Yeah, I think, you know, somewhere between probably rounds 2 and 4 is what I would say. Look, my comp, and I said it on the show prior to the draft, Greeny, was, look, you hope that he could be Andy Dalton. That's what I said prior to the draft. And I said it because of the physical skill set. And listen, it was not an insult. Andy Dalton has had a remarkable year. I think he's in year 17. He's thrown over 250 touchdown passes. But like, that's what I thought. Andy Dalton was a 2nd-round pick. Other people compared him to Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins went in the 4th round, I believe. So I just think that, you know, from a physical ability perspective, look, he was not a 1st-round prospect in my eyes, and I think many people felt that way. Now, his tape and production, I think it's fair to say, you know, look, rounds 2 instead of round 4 could make sense for a lot of people.
That's my point. Okay, so that confirmed what I believe, that he was probably a 2nd-round caliber player. And let's use Andy Dalton. Dominique, I would suggest that a young Andy Dalton would easily be the starting quarterback on these Cleveland Browns. I look at the room that he's walking into. Joe Flacco, who is 40 years old, he too has had a terrific career, but he's 40 years old. Deshaun Watson is never playing there again. Kenny Pickett is on his 3rd team in 3 years. I know Dillon Gabriel was drafted ahead of him, but literally not one evaluator I know had Dillon Gabriel ranked ahead of Shedeur Sanders. He fell for entirely other reasons. The point I'm trying to make here, Dominique, is that while the weekend obviously felt like a disaster for him, the way it turned out, I think he wound up in a place where he has an excellent chance to play, which very rarely can you say about a quarterback drafted in the 5th round.
Yeah, I mean, I like the spin that you're putting on it, and I think you're right. He has an excellent chance to play, but you need to play well and play well fast if you're a 5th-round pick, and you're on a team that's probably projected to be near the top of the 1st round again next year. If he does not demonstrate in whatever time he gets in practice and in the games that he is a franchise quarterback, there's no waiting time. There's no investment in him. They're not going to go get all the pieces to put around him to make him play better like we've seen with Caleb Williams teams and other quarterbacks who are drafted in the first round. If he does not show that he is the franchise quarterback in this season at some point, they're drafting another quarterback in the first round next year. So I think you're right. He has a good chance of getting on the field, but he does not have a long leash or a lot of time to prove that he's the quarterback for this team for years to come.
I guess that's true based on the place that he was drafted. But if he had been drafted in the second round, we'd be talking about him right now as the starting quarterback of this team. And he's the same guy, right? He didn't play a football game over the last 3 months.
He wasn't drafted in the second round.
No, I understand that.
That's the thing. It's like, be legendary.
Don't think he's their starter this year?
I don't know if he makes the team this year. I don't know if we could say that. He's the 5th round pick who was the 4th quarterback on the depth chart right now. And the same insular world that told him to be legendary and you're a first-round pick and don't be a combine, workout guy and don't do the Senior Bowl and don't do it. I would hope someone is like, all right, let's reset this and say it's going to be a little different right now. The path has changed, and everyone's assuming that that their light has gone off and he's going to just come in and just be like, all right, I'm going to be a backup, be seen, not heard. I want to do everything I can to make this team. We don't know that.
Well,
so I think it's, yes, his ability. That was all along. It's what's reality, and if he gets to Browns camp and isn't willing to be the first one in, the last one out, and isn't willing to prepare the others like Dylan Gabriel will, we don't even know if he's going to make it for week 1.
Tim, I have a moment left. Go ahead, finish it up. What is your expectation?
Yeah, well, Peter's exactly right. It's not a lock that he makes the roster, out of camp. Look at 5th round, picks. They don't always make the team right out of camp. But I would say this, Greeny, to your point, if you're a 5th round pick, especially a quarterback, you're looking for any glimmer of hope for an opportunity to have an impact, prove to people that you can play. Any glimmer of hope. And so to your point, the glimmer of hope is this. Joe Flacco hadn't started an entire season since 2017. Kenny Pickett came in as a first rounder in 2022, is already on his 3rd team, and then you're dealing with another rookie. That's your glimmer of hope, but it is like put your head down and work, as Peter said.
Yes, hopefully he will do that. And what I will say...
News in the SportsCenter, the 49ers wasting no time in their offseason, getting their superstar tight end on the books for the foreseeable future. San Francisco locking up 6-time Pro Bowler George Kittle in a deal. It is a 4-year extension worth over $76 million, including $40 million of that guaranteed. Kittle has played his entire career in San Francisco after being drafted in the 5th round in 2017. As promised, Peter Schrager here to break all things down. We had a bunch of different questions scripted for you, and then we get the breaking news 10 minutes ago. That's show business, baby. So, Peter, what is your reaction to this extension?
Well, it keeps George Kittle as a 49er, as he should be. Back in 2020, 5 years ago, they had a long, arduous contract negotiation that ended up with having Kittle being the highest paid tight end in the league. That was in 2020. I remember it because I remember speaking with George the day after, and I said, how'd you celebrate? He said, well, we had some Panda Express and wine in my apartment last night. I said, that's George Kittle for you. Yeah. 5 years later, this was going down that road again, where it was getting in the public a little bit that Kittle wasn't thrilled with his deal. It was up. Well, they take care of him. And now the question is, if you're keeping this thing going and the consistency, what do we do with Fred Warner? What do we do with Brock Purdy? The Niners, they're not saying their window is closed just yet. They're keeping it open, and it's a lot of the guys that were there for that whole run that took them to 2 Super Bowl appearances and all those NFC Championship games.
Because Debo is now in D.C., and you're looking at Kittle, 31 years old, still led the 49ers in receiving yards and touchdowns and catches. All right, let's run the 2-minute drill. Here we go. 128 days until opening night. Draft is over. Free agency, they're done barring any unexpected chaos. So what storylines, Schrags, should we be watching for right now?
All right, here are just 4 stories that I would keep an eye on over the next several months. First is Aaron Rodgers' watch, and I can call it Aaron Rodgers' Watch 2025. We got that Jets logo there. He's currently on the market. Who wants him? Well, the Steelers